All right, everyone. Canada and Mexico have backed down from Trump. This was quite predictable. Donald Trump has a unique advantage among recent U.S. presidents. Most of them come from the lawyer class, or they come from the dedicated political elite, which means that while they may have been to foreign countries, they stayed in the tourist hotel, they didn't conduct business there, and they didn't conduct diplomacy there. For example, let's say that Bernie Sanders had ascended to the presidency. He started out his career getting kicked out of a commune, becoming a rough carpenter, getting fired from that job, becoming a teacher briefly, and then becoming mayor of Burlington. Then he entered the House and then, upon vacancy, the Senate. Other than going to the USSR on honeymoon, what diplomatic capabilities does he bring to the table? None. Absolutely none. Kamala Harris, for example. Let's say she had ascended to the presidency. What could you expect from her? Okay, let's see. Lawyer and crooked prosecutor in California. Then in Congress briefly. And then you were the VP for a while, but you never really went anywhere or did anything. How are you supposed to conduct diplomacy in potentially adversarial nations? Well, you can't. You don't know anything about their cultures. That's the whole problem. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has flown he's probably been in every country in the goddamn world at this point, other than maybe some of the Central Asian or African nations or something like that. Oddly enough, George W. was the one that did the African outreach. I have to give him credit. I give him 1 point on his presidency just for being able to solidify Western Africa under the Western banner. Which is odd, considering that China immediately postured to gobble up East Africa and is currently colonializing them. Donald Trump has actually done business in these countries. He's done business in Canada. He's done business in Mexico. He's done business in Russia and in China and in Japan and places like this. Our two largest trading partners just back down from him because they know that he knows what he's doing. And this is one of the most important aspects of a Trump presidency. He actually knows what he's doing. He's number one, he's coherent and cognizant. He's actually self-aware. Not something we got from the prior administration. And number two, he's been in these places, talked to people, actually attempted to make profit in the process, and understands how their boardrooms work. I referred to an article a couple of days ago, and I can't remember what year it was from. It's from the New York Times. And it had a detailed list of how the boardroom structure works in different countries. So in the United States, CEO is calling the shots. Delegates the authority, assuming that there's an efficient company, to various managerial staff, the lower, class of the upper management, and then they delegate further. It's very hierarchical. In Scandinavia, it's very cyclical. It relies upon discussion. It's almost an oligarchic system. In Japan, you have a different way of doing things. In some cultures, you are supposed to wine and dine a person before negotiations. In other cultures, you just shake hands and then you have a conversation. Donald Trump actually knows this. The former administration did not know this. That's why diplomacy is breaking out now and didn't break out before. There are different ways, different strokes for different folks, basically, is the best way that you can term it. If you have a boardroom style, you have to go along with the kind of boardroom that you're working with when you're in a foreign culture, or you're not going to get any results. This bleeds over into politics. That same culture is there for a reason. What happens in the boardroom doesn't stay in the boardroom. What happens in the boardroom is also part of politics. It's part of haggling and negotiation in commercial settings, mercantilism, travel, literally everything. When you go, for example, to different cities in the United States, you're going to have an example of different cultures. If you go to a New England city and somebody offers you something on the street, it is understood that it is free. They are offering you something for free. Now go to New Orleans. When they hand it to you, they're going to whip out a paper pad and say, well, that'll be $15. There's a difference between cultures. That's just within the United States. We're the same country. It is vastly different culture to culture around the world. United States, especially in blue states, there's a sense of political correctness, self-censorship, introversion. Now go to the Netherlands. Nobody gives a damn. Now you can say the N-word on the street and people will be like, whatever. Nobody cares. It's entirely different. Even within smaller countries, like the Netherlands, there's going to be a vastly different sort of tone to the way that people act in Amsterdam, which is very cosmopolitan, multiracial, multicultural, etc. It's a cosmopolitan city. It's different there than if you go to the eastern side. If you go up to Friesland, for example, ain't no multiculturalism there. 99% Frisians. That's what you get. They'll speak Dutch, and most of them speak fluent English as well. They're nice people. I enjoyed my time there. But it's a different feel. It's a different culture. It's not cosmopolitan. It's more insular. You go to Franeker, which is one of the greatest towns in the entire world, by the way, and you should visit it if you're ever in Western Europe. Franeker, you have my love forever. The reason why Canada and Mexico have backed down is because Donald Trump understands economics and the boardroom. And diplomacy, which is something that Biden rarely engaged in. Most of the time he was busy biking on Rehoboth Beach, actually, from Delaware. Donald Trump has been more of a workhorse over his first month in office. This does not surprise me, by the way. Donald Trump is having his last hurrah. He cannot run again for the presidency, and he's not going to run for any other political office after getting the Triple Crown anyway. But he knows how to deal with these other countries, which is something that we haven't seen in a while. Again, with the exception of George W. with African outreach, we haven't really had competent diplomatic leadership since the first term of Ronald Reagan. I mean, and before that, then you have like Carter and shit like that. So, and Lyndon Baines Johnson, yeah, he did a great job. Presidential history is fascinating, actually. You'd be surprised. Herbert Walker puking on the Japanese prime minister and passing out. That went over well. People thought he was being assassinated. Obama, red line in the sand with Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan and China and every other fucking country in the goddamn Eastern Hemisphere, never following through. He didn't understand how these cultures work. Donald Trump does. That's why he's being diplomatically successful. We're only a month in. Well, a little over a month now. So I expect fairly great things diplomatically, actually. When Mexico and Canada, which have large economies and they are major trading partners, say, oh, no, we'll negotiate with regards to border control and stuff like that. Please don't tariff us. He backed them down, not without good reason, and he did it successfully. It's funny how the liberal legacy media is not reporting on the fact that this has happened, by the way, generally speaking. That's about all. Peace out.